stage now.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for your patience as we got this episode started. We are back with another episode of Community by Mode Canada Rocks. This week's episode, we are so excited to be discussing sound as style and the different ways music globally and locally influence the way that we dress. Today, we are very excited to be joined by LOV, who is an artist from Treaty 6 territory, whose UK-inspired soul music transforms personal trials into affirmations of strength and independence. Recognized by CBC, APTN, and Seeing Red Media as an artist to watch, LOV's impact extends beyond music into fashion and culture. In 2025, she performed at Native Fashion Week and modeled for designer Rebecca Baker. In 2026, she will participate in the Artist in Residence program at the Allied Music Center, Massey Hall. Next, we also have Derick Chetty, who has spent 2 decades covering the fashion and lifestyle worlds of Toronto. Chetty has held roles including journalist, editor, stylist, fashion director at legacy publications such as Flair Magazine, The Toronto Star, and Zoomer Media. Chetty has consistently worked at the intersection of style, culture, storytelling, and visual communication, and has interviewed fashion luminaries such as Donna Karan, Tommy Hilfiger, Alexander Wang, and Haider Ackermann. Again, I mentioned earlier, dream job, dream person I would like to work with. I will acknowledge that we were supposed to have ZOBA MARTIN on the call today. We're not sure where she is. Hopefully it's a tech issue. Maybe she will join in, and we hope that everything is okay. But moving on to the episode, we do just want to add that, of course, this conversation explores Canada's own influence in the fashion and music industries. And we do have another community giveaway 2 weeks in a row. Again, if you leave a thoughtful question or comment within the first 15 minutes of this episode, of the live episode, of course, and you stay until the very end, you will be entered for a draw to win a $250 gift certificate to our friends at Toronto Designers Market. We will choose the winner at the end of the episode and tell you how to contact us for your prize. So make sure you are engaging, that you are here, and that you are participating so that you can win some goodies. And now let's get everybody onto the screen. Derick, we're going to start with you. There are your lovely faces. You both look so wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat. How are you both doing today?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Love you're doing well.
Good. Yep.
Good. Awesome. I'm happy to hear it. Derick, I'll get you to kick off our conversation. I'm sure that you'll agree that music and fashion, they've always informed one another. Can you share some important moments of this combustion over your impressive journalistic career where fashion definitively informed music or vice versa?
Great. Thanks. It's such a great subject, by the way, because we can talk endlessly about it. But to begin with, I think I'll just go back to the very beginning where one of the earliest examples where we saw fashion really influence the music and the music influence the fashion. And this is nothing new. The earliest example of this we can find is going back maybe 80 to 100 years ago, the zoot suit and the whole Harlem jazz scene. So as you know, the zoot suit was wide shoulders, heavily padded shoulders, and this is for men, nipped waist, but a pant that was ballooned but pegged at the bottom. So it was loads of fabric used in these suits. So it had a lot of fluidity and movement, which lends itself to the way some of those early jazz singers in Harlem moved, in terms of like swing dancing and all sorts of things like that. They sort of put really, they were showmen. It wasn't just their singing or their with the music or playing a musical instrument. That look really helped to show movement. And I think we really needed to mention that because as you know, the zoot suit went on really. It's classified as one of the first American suits. It wasn't something that was influenced from Europe. It just came from the streets, or what you might have called the ghetto at the time, and it was mostly worn by Black and brown men. And of course, it it played a big history in American history with, you know, there were riots in LA, which was later referred to in the 40s, the Zoot Suit riots, you know, but that's an entirely different thing. So I wanted to mention that because like that was one of the earliest examples that I can find of where fashion really played a part with music. I'm just going to touch on him because I know he's huge, but the reason why I want to mention him is Elvis Presley. So when he came on the scene, of course, you know, he came with a new sound, and it was post-war, and, you know, teenagers at the time, it was just jeans and t-shirts. It was very conservative. They had crew cuts, you know, it was post-war. But man, he would take the stage and he showed them not only a new sound, but in the way he moved and the way he dressed. Like his early days were very sharp suits, but the hip movements and those kinds of things, like, and the unbuttoned shirts down to the navel. No one saw that on stage before. And these middle America kids was totally blown away by that. And of course, started copying his style, you know, the pompadour haircut and stuff like that. But the reason why I wanted to mention him, and of course, the 70s, the 70s Elvis with the rhinestones and the studded jumpsuits. I mean, that was Las Vegas showmanship, but that certainly paved the way for what we're seeing today in music, you know, and a lot of performers who have residencies in Las Vegas and elsewhere. Like you've got to have stage presence, not just with your music, but the way you look. You know, there's, let's say hurrah for glitz and glamour, you know. But one of the things I wanted to mention about Elvis, like, I would have to say he was probably one of the first people who took advantage of merchandising himself. Like today, you're not a musician unless, you know, you've got a beauty line, a perfume, or hopefully a clothing line or a sneaker or something like that. And those are all great things. And you should have that because, you know, you just open up yourself to a wider audience. But in 1957, Elvis Presley, it was December 31st, 1956. On the front page of the Wall Street Journal, there was a story by a business writer, and the headline was, "Elvis Presley Today is a Business." And the story went on to detail how much he was making with his record and his merchandise sales. This was in 1956. So I really think he was probably one of the first people who understood the power of a look on stage and how to market that and make money from that. Now, when you think of fashion and music, I can't think of another movement where they both arrived at the same time, but they both influenced each other and they both created a movement, and that is the punk movement. So the Sex Pistols met up with Vivienne Westwood, and magic was formed, you know. So that look was you can't talk about a movement like either music or fashion without those two people coming to mind right away. And the look of it, you know, it was safety pins. You can just say safety pins, Doc Marten boots, torn shirts, plaid, and everyone will know you're talking about punk right away. So I felt like that was one genre that really, you know, speaks to what we're talking about today. They both influence each other, and they're both, without each other, you know, it was nothing. So going into a more modern era now, and probably one of my favorites is, of course, and there are others too, like other genres or movements, which I sort of eliminated just for sake of time, but I felt like they didn't have they had, like, take for instance, the late 60s and early 70s, like the whole Flower Children and, you know, all of those kinds of concerts. But I think those were movements that the power behind those movements was more about social things that were going on at the time. But sure, you could dig deep and, you know, you'll be able to find some fashion trends out of those things. But I sort of left those off just for the sake of time, that I felt they had more to do with fashion. But we cannot escape the 70s and disco.
Right.
The disco era, and, you know, people like which brought on like a lot of, like, Donna Summer, it brought on glamour. Now we are going to see this just was something, you know, fresh and new, not new to the glamour, but like we were now seeing like the sparkle, the glitz, the sequin, the satins, the slinky clothing. And it really lent itself to that music, because when you're in the disco at that era and you're gliding across the dance floor, the clothes were very, very sensual. You know, they were like slipping off of you because, you know, there were all those silky, satiny kind of things, you know. So it really lent itself to that era and that kind of music, which, you know, had a lot of sexuality, you know, around it. So I really felt like that was one era where music and the fashion really came together, and they really sort of helped each other.
Of course. I would add too, I think that one person that comes to mind a lot is Madonna as well, just to name a specific person to do the inverse. And I know that I'm not a fashion music historian, and I am not like an older person who's alive during that time. I know Madonna from my mother loving her and my father hating her, and it being a conversation in the house. But when I think about Jean-Paul Gaultier and the corsets, and the fact that we still see that today, that idea of, you know, dressing as the pure virgin who's also, you know, a little bit sexy, a little bit risque, towing that line. I think of the legacy that leads, and those music videos that are still so timeless. Then we start to see Sabrina Carpenter doing something similar now and bringing her out. And so it continues to have a cycle of relevancy. I don't know if you agree, but
no,
that's
totally. And the thing that I will give credit to Madonna is the idea of reinvention, because she showed us that, yeah, you can adopt a look with your music, but you can change that up. You can completely do, you know, a turnaround and change it up. Because when she entered the scene, it was a lot of thrift store finds, you know, the tulle skirt, the cropped leggings, the rubber bands, the rubber bracelets that she had, and all of that. And that was in the 80s. And there were girls, you know, at school, when I was at school at that time, and we called them the Madonnas, because they completely copied that look, you know, from the frizzed out hair, the gelled hair, you know, and the frizz. And it was very easy to do because, it was all thrift store finds. But then as Madonna grew, she became a lot more sophisticated. Then she started going to the designer stuff. And then her concerts were like literally little mini fashion shows. By the time she got to Blonde Ambition, and I do remember being at that concert, like she introduced a designer like Jean-Paul Gaultier, which was a very avant-garde French designer at the time. And if you were in fashion, you knew about him, but the general public didn't really know about Jean-Paul Gaultier. But when she appeared on stage with that pointed cone bra and the pinstripe pants and stuff like that, the world suddenly discovered this man, you know. And so she did a lot of things like that throughout her career. She would, you know, go on to like champion certain designers. Like she went through a period with Givenchy, with Riccardo Tisci when he was there at the time. So she had a lot of influence. But I think the thing that we could learn from Madonna is that, yes, you can continually experiment with your fashion look. You didn't have to stick to one thing, you know. But moving on from her, and I was going to get to her, but one of the genres that I think that completely changed the game, and we're still sort of in the throes of it right now, is hip hop. No other genre meshed up with fashion the way they did, you know. So people like, you know, Run DMC, first of all, it started off there where like they took things that were easily accessible and made them sort of status symbols for young people, sort of like the Adidas sneakers, the big chunky gold chains, you know. Those were all of the things that and the tracksuit, you know. Suddenly, like, you had kids who were like overwhelmingly dressing like that, you know. So it was they sort of entered with that and they ran with that. But then it took people like Jay-Z and Lil Kim and Mary J. Blige now to up it up, you know. So they went to the next level and they started going now to the luxury brands and started adopting the luxury brands like LVMH, like Louis Vuitton, Polo, Ralph Lauren, that sort of thing. And it got to really crazy heights, and you could tell at the very beginning these luxury houses were not exactly welcoming, because
Right.
in 1999, in November, the November issue of Interview magazine in 1999, Lil Kim was on the cover, and she wore nothing but the the LV Louis Vuitton logo stamped
Right.
all over her body.
Yeah.
And Louis Vuitton actually, sent a cease and desist letter to the magazine, and they bought the rights to the photo outright because they didn't want that to grow any,
Right.
bigger. But that was like seminal. Like, people just went crazy over that. So that was the height of like the whole logo mania in
Yeah.
that period, when everyone started realizing, okay, these were the labels that we wanted to aspire to acquire. So we have a lot to thank, and people like Mary J. Blige and Lil Kim, they also got beauty contracts. They were the face of Mac, and I remember being at a party that Mac threw in New York for them, and so it was great to see artists like that now fronting beauty campaigns, because before it wasn't like that. So they certainly did a lot to move the needle, so to speak, in fashion. Along that way too, another one I wanted to mention this because it was interesting, grunge in the 1990s, because they were anti-fashion. They're like Kurt Cobain and those types. They were just getting things from thrift shops, or vintage stores, so it might have been like an old cardigan, torn t-shirt and that sort of thing. So it's interesting that their anti-fashion stance actually became a fashion trend.
Yeah,
and it inspired people like Marc Jacobs, who did an entire Perry Ellis collection based on grunge. And then luxury houses started adopting that and was like doing, luxurious things, inspired by grunge. And I just wanted to mention that, like, how they actually didn't want anything to do with fashion, but ultimately became a huge fashion trend in the 90s.
100%. Now I'm curious, I want to hear from Love, because I need to know where your musical influence has sort of brought your fashion sense. And the minute that Derick mentioned Elvis, I had this moment of being like, what is your merch consideration in all of this? Because I imagine, that is something that's like coming up in your mind now, the more that you grow and become popular. So I'm curious, what merch is Love going to be putting out into the world?
This is actually a conversation I've had with my manager recently about what kind of energy I want to put forward when it comes to merchandise, because I am a minimalistic person and I don't like fast fashion. I want to make sure that I'm making something that is of quality and something that is authentic to, who I am with my identity. So I definitely want to have something embroidered with like indigenous florals, something that's going to last long, something that's going to be comfortable that people can wear. And I also just think like a simple tee goes a long way. Like, people want to support you, especially fans, and like tees can last forever when they're made with good, like, quality products. Especially if they're manufactured in Canada. So that's ultimately the goal for me. I don't really see myself getting too intense with merchandise, because I actually am like, I've been like, I sew and I bead and I do all like the traditional stuff with like my culture, right? So I can bead and make earrings and stuff like that. And it's something that I love to do for myself. So I don't ever want to offer up all these things that I love for like a market. I just like to keep things to myself sometimes, because I already like did that with music, right? Like, for a long time, music was just something I did because I loved it. And now I'm doing it as my job. So I want to have little like bits and pieces of, indigenous florals and showcasing that, but I don't think I will go into like having that be a very big thing like Elvis or like, anyone like that.
That's fair. And now bringing it back to the music, of course, and your gorgeous sound, I'm curious, who would you say are your musical influences, and how does fashion impact your sound?
Musical influences for sure would be like top 3, probably Amy Winehouse, Erykah Badu, and like Khruangbin.
Oh, wow.
I love being versatile with
Ah,
all different kinds of like sounds and
mm.
what those sounds bring into the world. Um, and what was the other part of the question?
How does fashion impact your sound? So when you're thinking about that mindfulness, or I've asked other people we've had on the show, if you put on an outfit and does it give you a persona when you're on stage? Do you feel like it alters the way that you're presenting yourself, or is it more of you affirming who Love is with her audience and her group?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both because
Mm.
for me, I've always had the ability to like mask or go into this alter ego, whether that's for any type of work I've been doing or, I think we kind of all do that with fashion and with just operating in the world is we have this outfit on and all of a sudden it just brings in a different kind of energy. And I find with specific like stage wear, I tend to go to this very like sleek and earth toned type of vibe because that's what I want to embody when I'm on stage.
Mm.
A lot of my music is grounded in femininity and, a matriarchal viewpoint of the world. It's also music that I think has been influenced by a time when authenticity was like what everybody was doing.
Of course.
And so much has changed in the last 15 years with fashion. So yeah, I like to keep things simple. I also like to keep things kind of comfortable. I don't want to go on stage and not feel like myself. So
Of course. Yeah. Sometimes I see the outfits and the high heels, and I just imagine that when I go out, I by an hour in want to take all of it off. So sometimes I wonder how Sabrina Carpenter and people like that are doing it in those outfits. I think I would be barefoot in like an easy breezy dress so I can focus on like the words I'm singing and not any foot pain. But I'm wondering if there's some kind of secret famous person hack that I don't know, some partnership with Dr. Scholl's where they have comfort built in. Because
you just got to get
right?
your inner Sasha Fierce. That's all.
Yes, I appreciate that. And now, of course, since you mentioned your sound, for those of you listening in, we want to give you a bit of a treat. So here is a clip from one of your latest releases. I Give You Love. We're going to give you some love.
Asking all the questions, don't have answers to, like, can I learn you? Can I feel you? Can I love you? Baby, can you? Baby, can you? Baby, oh, can you? Baby, can you? Baby, can you? You love it when I call you Big Papa, number one fan, no shocker. Love it when you call me on the weekend. Show me who you are through the seasons. You're brighter than the stars, you be shining. The way you make me laugh got me smiling. Always gonna make time for you. Always gonna make time for you. Sweeter than my solitude, baby. Got me low-key feeling you. Try to win me over, I got attitude. Asking all the questions, don't have answers to, like, how can I feel you?
All right. And I believe that we now also have ZOBA on the call, who is, I believe, might be at an airport, which is funny because we keep having guests who like to travel on Wednesdays. And I did not know this was like peak travel day. But I'm going to read Chizoba. I say Zoba because that's the brand name. But let me read Chizoba's bio quickly so we get a sense of the amazing work that she's doing. So Chizoba Udeh-Martin is a Nigerian-born founder and leader of ZOBA MARTIN, a Toronto-based luxury label known for elegant, hyper-flattering women's wear, if I do say so myself, bridal and made-to-measure designs. Recognized for her expertise in pattern making and couture construction, Chizoba has received awards including Emerging Designer of the Year at African Fashion Week Toronto and Telfer's Young Achiever and Pioneering Couture Fashion Designer Award in 2024. Her work has appeared on runways including Startup Fashion Week and Cashmere Couture for the Cause, which has been worn by artists including Drake, Michie Mee, Olunike Adeliyi, and VanJess. ZOBA, that bio. We had to get you in the show because your resume
Yeah.
precedes itself. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I came to New York for a retreat and I thought this was on Friday, but I'm here. I got it. I'm
You
fine,
know,
thanks.
she's an entrepreneur. She's doing it all. We really appreciate your time. And perfect, because you were honestly the next question, so we're ready for you.
Oh,
Please tell us about your journey, your inspiration, and how you grew your brand to arrive at a place where you're now dressing some of those powerhouse people I just named.
my journey. Okay. Thank you. A nice outfit. I wonder where you got it from.
Thank you. I'm wearing ZOBA MARTIN.
Yeah. My name is Chizoba. I moved to Canada at 16. My mom brought me and then she stayed with me for 10 days and she left. So culture shock in a country where my skin was itchy, my hair was falling off. It felt so strange to be in another country. But then I toughed it out. I went to university, I studied business. And then after that, I wanted to continue my creative career as a designer. So I learned how to make clothes. And since then, I've upgraded my skills. I've gone to Ghana, for example, to learn how to make outfits for plus size bodies. And over time, I just keep upgrading my skills and meeting amazing people and making clothes for them. And I learn as I go. So that's how I got here. And my parents, they've been very supportive of me when I said I wanted to go into fashion. No one was like, why are you doing that? They were like, no, we support you. What school do you want to go to? How much do you need? So that was very helpful for me. So I like to give my parents their flowers for the support they poured into me when I first started. And yeah, now I'm at a retreat learning
Yeah.
about business.
No, I appreciate you making this work so quickly. Thank you. And I also
Yes,
appreciate
yes.
your success because I remember your mom and you braiding my hair, I believe, right before you left on tour with Drake, because you were doing my hair and then you never did it again because I almost never saw you again because you went to Amsterdam with the Drake. And so my perfect segue into my next question, because that experience has to be so different from having someone pull an outfit that you have made that is your brand versus someone
Yeah.
else's aesthetic. You are doing wardrobe behind the scenes. You are flying around. So can you share what makes that experience so unique and what it's been like in comparison to making your own brand?
Oh yeah. Okay. So how I got there, long story, or just part of my story that contributed to that. I went to Ghana because there was COVID, and I just traveled for like 3.5 months to be with my family, and I took that break. And I didn't want to just stay doing nothing, so I went to Ghana and I took a course to learn how to make corsets for plus size women and just more advanced garments, right? So I came back to Canada and then I got a call. It is a music video shoot for a Drake music video. And it's so funny, like the same thing I just learned was what they needed, and I was able to deliver it in like in like a few hours. So
That's
that was
amazing.
like one of the stronger like pivotal moments in my career, because it was just how did that thing I just went to learn like lead to this, right? So that's something I'm very grateful for. And then like traveling and all of that just tells on it's exciting. I'm very grateful for it. And I just feel like being backstage and like working on outfits just pushes you to like, because when Drake is on stage, it's not like sometimes you have to make something quick, right? So
Yeah.
all of that has definitely contributed to my career and like built my skills and like just challenged me as a designer and as a person. So yeah.
I can imagine, but I feel like I haven't seen you in so long, so I'm going to give you my major congratulations because it's just
Oh,
been
thank
a
you.
whirlwind from making that giant bra on a complex, getting going
Yeah.
viral, to the amazing clothes and now the ready to wear. You've been doing such amazing work.
Yeah.
I'm so proud.
Thank you.
Of course. Derick, I'm going to throw it back to you. I'm curious if you have any favorite Canadian fashion music moments, because you gave us such a amazing historical breakdown. So I'm curious about any Canadian fashion specific moments and how today's artists are bringing fashion and music together, and like how are the fans interacting and leading some of those trends as well.
Yeah, there's a couple. One of my favorite memories, there used to be a benefit gala called Fashion Cares for to raise money for HIV awareness. And it was once a year, and they used to have this blowout, huge, giant fashion show and musical guests also performing. And some of those, like some of the stars that they got to come, I remember when Elton John came to perform, like, and they would perform whilst the fashion show was going on. And, you know, that was just crazy. And Jerry Halliwell, when she just stepped down from the Spice Girls, came 1 year or two, and she performed, and it was absolutely crazy. So there were fun moments like that, remembering how they were able to share a stage with a fashion show and perform their music in front of thousands of people. Yeah, so those were great. But one of my and I always love this because like, for instance, Celine Dion, huge talent. And before she was what she is today, even back when she was doing her first residency, like, I often felt like she was probably not given the credit that she deserved. Like, nobody looked at her as a fashion diva, you know.
Right.
She would come out wearing beautiful gowns, you know, but it was just Celine, you know, this Canadian songbird. And of course, she was big around the world and big in Europe, particularly in France. But it wasn't until around, I believe, 2016 when she enlisted the celebrity stylist La Roche, who, when she was going to Paris Fashion Week, like the haute couture collections in particular, and he started styling her for that. And suddenly this was a different kind of Celine we were seeing. Like, there she was in like leather pants, you know, or a full-on head-to-toe leather outfit, and she was wearing edgier designers. Like Demna had just gotten to Balenciaga. She was wearing Balenciaga, and La Roche said, you know, she was probably one of the first celebrities who had started wearing Balenciaga. And every day during the couture collections, like, the newspapers would just be blasting photos in some outfit that Celine was wearing, and she would change multiple times throughout the day. So they would clock the outfit exiting the hotel at the fashion show, and she'd go back and change for another show. So it was just crazy, but it was chaotic and beautiful to see that because even La Roche himself said in an interview, before he started working with her, he thought that she was 70. And this was in the 2016 era, and because he said, like, he felt like she wasn't dressing, you know, like where she could really be, you know, she had so much more potential. And I agreed, because all of that notice, like, sort of catapulted her into the pages of Vogue. And that's when I realized, like, wait a minute, she's never been on the cover of Vogue, and as a huge star like that. And I mean, in American Vogue, she didn't get the cover at that time, but she got like umpteen pages where they shot the couture collections, various looks from the couture collections on her. So I thought, like, finally, like, I saw it, you know, you know, that Celine could be a fashion star. And I felt like that was great that happened for her. But there were other, like, Canadians, their music video. I mean, Shania Twain in that leopard outfit in that video. I mean, come on, that's iconic, you know. That was just absolutely fantastic. And Gord Downey also, from the Tragically Hip, in that final, you know, concept, when he wore these leather pieces designed for him by Izzy Camilleri, and also the hats that he wore, those feathered brimmed hats, which was designed by a local milliner here in Toronto, Lilliput hats, and the designer Karen Gingras, you know, handcrafted those hats for him. And I felt that was very emotional, because we all knew that this was his last performance. And so obviously all of that had a lot of gravitas with it, but it was a look. And I mean, people were clamoring for the hats, you know, and I think they might have done a collection years after that, but I felt like that was certainly a moment in time.
That's amazing. I'm curious, very briefly, because we are getting close to the end of our episode, but I'm curious, Derick, any premonition for what you think Celine is going to wear for these Paris residencies because she's got 16 shows. So what do you think she's going to do?
Can you imagine? It's going to be like, I'm sure there's going to be multiple outfit changes, throughout.
Oh, yeah.
It's ultimately going to be a fashion show also. So
100%.
I am sure, I don't know who is styling her for that as yet, if that has been announced, but I'm sure it's going to be some of the latest and some of the hottest designers. And actually in Paris right now, there's been a lot of changes with designers moving from house to house. So there are new designers at Chanel, at Dior, and those are all great labels that she can certainly wear and pull off. But there's one thing I wanted to mention too before we wrap up, like this whole dialogue about music and fashion, and I just think it's so interesting. Like before, like musicians were using fashion like to telegraph their their look and something about them, and but now, isn't it interesting that we have a musician leading the head of a fashion house in Paris? And I'm talking about Pharrell designing the menswear at Louis Vuitton, because I think it's unprecedented. Like I can't think of, yes, kudos to Kanye, like when he came out with Yeezy, like that, created quite a buzz and it sold really well. But this is, we're talking about here at the height of fashion, in Paris, with a major storied, legendary label. And it's a musician who's designing that. And I just think like that is just amazing.
Amazing. No, I completely agree. That's such a great nod as well. Lev, I wanted to ask you, as we get ready to wrap, I'm just curious, and you did mention it a bit when we were talking about the merch as well, but I'm curious, when you're claiming your signature sound and style, how important is it for you to work with Indigenous designers, or are you trying to have a mix of influences a lot like how you sound?
I think it's important, but I also think it's important to just let myself be a part of the new world of fashion as well. I think having a balanced, I don't know, like I think on my everyday wear, I don't necessarily want to be as traditional, right? It doesn't work. But on stage, I feel like I walk in two worlds constantly. And I want to showcase that, which is actually something I want to do on my album release show in weeks, where I want to do an outfit change because it really does show how I show up in both worlds. So I want to wear my traditional ribbon skirt with my moccasins and, my dentalium and all that. And then I want to switch to like something a little bit more flashy and just in trend because, I think it's super important to showcase both for just my experience as a human being first. But also I do want to give that opportunity to designers to showcase, what they're working on, because I actually do get to wear Rebecca's Grenier Baker's stuff often, especially when I perform on the West Coast, because that's where she is. So I do absolutely love to wear anything that a designer has crafted. I think it's such a, I don't know, I feel so grateful for it. So a little bit of both. I am looking for a designer to work with me, especially going forward, just with certain things that I do have. So, somebody in Toronto would be amazing. And
I'm not staring at ZOBA, but I'm literally staring at ZOBA. Like just an idea.
Because I do love fashion, but I understand that's also not my niche. That's not my craft. And I love giving people, when that is their craft and that is what their calling is, I love just being like, okay, I fully trust you. Just make me something, because it is a stressor when I'm traveling and I'm touring and I'm like, okay, how do I pack this outfit and this outfit and this outfit on the airport outfit? And like, it would be so nice to just go somewhere and somebody already has it for me. So working towards that right now.
Amazing. And I'm curious too, I just wanted you to briefly mention, because you said the album release party is in a couple weeks. When does the album drop so everybody listening to this can go and download it?
So the album drops June 12th. I actually have all my little CDs and my vinyls. They finally came in. I'm super excited. It's out June 12th, and then I'm having my album release show June 13th in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, because that's kind of like my home base.
And if I remember right, June 13th is also Indigenous Peoples Day.
No, it's the equinox. So the first day of summer is Indigenous Peoples Day, but June is Indigenous Peoples Month. So
still perfect time.
Yeah.
And Zoba, I'm going to throw you one more question very briefly. I know I've kept you all for so long, but I know I want to hear more from Zoba. And other than LOV, since we just said this, if you could dress any other Canadian artist in the ZOBA MARTIN brand vibe and ethos, who would that be?
I need a minute for that. It has to be Canadian.
Yes, preferably. This is a Canadian show. Mm-hmm.
Oh Lord. You have another question? I can answer that. Like after that.
Those were the questions. You can cheat and say somebody non-Canadian.
Let's do Cherry. I like Cherry. Yeah.
There we go. Cherry.
Yes.
Well, Cherry and LOV, this is your call out to get some ZOBA MARTIN pieces. And that was another amazing episode of this show. I want to thank you all for your patience getting us started. Zoba, I'm so glad you were able to be a part. Sorry.
Oh, I'm glad
Zoba.
too.
I always say your brand name is your name, but I want to thank you so much for being able to join us. So thank you to Zoba, Derick, and LOV for your time. We're going to be back here June 10th, again at 6 p.m., which is sort of our new time on YouTube and on Instagram as we explore la francophonie. I can practice my français in an episode. I won't do that because equity. But thank you all so much for your time and for being here. Now it's another episode of Community.
Thank you.
Thank you.